morning, good afternoon, and or good evening, wherever you are in the world. We appreciate you joining us for Frontlines, and welcome to the Frontlines breakout session. Hopefully you are all as excited as I am about some of the new developments that Maya and Maggie talked about. My name is Andersen, and I head up our solutions engineering team here at Front, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. I'm excited to be joined by two innovators in the customer operations space. We have David Morris, CFO from Armstrong Transport Group, and Louisa Fife, Senior Project Coordinator at Marshalls PLC. And the topic for today's chat is, how do I build smarter automation without a single line of code? We know no code is very popular nowadays. And so hopefully you walk away from today's session with some advice and best practices on how to build automation and integrations into Front. David and Louisa, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, before we dive in, just want to clarify that this is a live session, so we want you to engage with us, and hopefully we can take as many questions as possible throughout the session. Go ahead and post those questions in the Q&A tool, which should be at the very top of your screen. My colleague Sarah is going to be managing those, and she's going to bubble up as many of those as she can over to us. If we don't get to your questions, though, please feel free to go to the community.front.com URL. That's our Front community page, and you can post your questions there. We will certainly do our best to get over to them. All right, we look forward to engaging with you. So let's kick things off with not a question, but an introduction. So Louisa, let's start with you. We would love to hear a little bit about yourself, your role, your company, Marshalls, and the teams that are on Front.
Well, thanks very much for having me. So Marshalls PLC is a building and landscaping company. It's very diverse in what it does. It will provide stuff to landscape your garden, building products. It will provide civils and drainage. And I've been with the company for 8 years now. The business as a whole works as different business units, and as you can imagine, that is quite complex for us to try and roll out a single system to. So we started with the domestic landscaping guys on Front. That team particularly, they interact with customers, they facilitate orders, they provide pricing, they ensure deliveries get to where they're meant to be. They were initially dealing with message overload and the lack of kind of coordination around the customer experience element. So having rolled it out to those guys, we've grown to all of our customer facing teams, specifically our trading teams. We've recently brought on our technical team, our credit account management team, and we've also got drop-in centres where developers can go in and visualise builds. And the guys who run those teams, the specification team, they also have Front as well. So it really helps us to be able to cohesively work between us and get a really good customer experience.
It's really awesome to hear, Louisa, and thanks for sharing that. And I know Louisa is probably not going to toot her own horn, but I do want to take a moment to shout out that Marshalls has also one of the highest CSAT ratings of all of our customers at 99% consistently as well. So you must be doing something right. All right, David, we would love to turn the question over to you. Can you share with us a little bit about yourself, Armstrong, and the teams that are on Front?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Dave Morris, CFO at Armstrong Transport Group. Armstrong is a non-asset 3PL headquartered in Charlotte. I've been with the company for 4 years. We've been with Front for well over a year. We started with moving over our carrier relations, our collection, our billing, and our credit functions into Front. And it's been phenomenal because what it's allowed us to do is put our customer service at the forefront to really build out that interface that we need with each of our our agents, our shippers, and our carriers. So it's been a phenomenal experience, and look forward to this next 30 minutes or so.
Awesome. Thanks for that intro, David. And, I think one thing just to echo from what Mathilde said in the Frontline session keynote that we just saw, just preparing for Frontlines, we've seen so many speakers from so many different industries, bringing on so many different teams onto Front. And I think that's really, really powerful. And I think that takes us really well into the next question, which is, when it comes to the general approach of building and prioritizing automation, how is it that you think about that within your businesses and your different teams? So Louisa, I'd love to pose the question to you first. Yeah, how do you think about this?
So the way that we looked at it was we took one of our businesses that was very much a closed cell, our domestic landscaping business, and used them as a proof of concept. So there are a very diverse group of people in there. They've got some that are really technical, others who are less technical. And if everyone on that team could pick it up, we knew we were doing something right. We definitely knew we were doing something right when they started using the automation on their personal settings, when they're starting using those rules for themselves. We absolutely knew we were on the right track. Our biggest priority is getting messages to the right people at the right time so that that customer journey is nice and smooth, and equally to get us access into our legacy systems to be able to make sure that the guys aren't flicking from one browser to another, to make sure that they are having a nice smooth journey at their end of the system as well.
Awesome. Yeah, those are some really great examples. And, I love that you talk about how automation with Front is just something that anybody can really use, both the tech forward and the maybe tech laggards or those who are new to technology. That's exactly kind of what inspires us to build Front as a product, is to make sure that anybody can benefit from the power of automation. And that's really cool to hear that you guys have done that and that your teams have been able to adapt and adopt that, both from a team perspective, but also from a personal perspective. We love to hear those. David, would love your thoughts on the same question.
Yeah, prior to Front, we really had no automation within our email process. Our back office receives well over 1,000 emails a day. And these messages can range from critical messages from our agents and our customers and our carriers to auto replies to spam and just a general thank you email, right? So we noticed that it was a big pain point for us. And while we did, have a shared inbox, we took very much of an approach of just manually looking for those critical emails and trying to figure out which ones to prioritize, and then ultimately going oldest to newest. But given this volume, we knew that we needed to find a solution to help automate. So we started looking into it. We did several demos. It became very clear that Front had the technology that we needed to help us. But given a lot of our current technology priorities within our company, we have our own transportation management system where a lot of our tech resources go. We knew we had to find a solution that we could enhance and build without a lot of code from that tech team. So that was really important to me. Things that we could do ourselves with not being a very tech savvy. So once we got into it, we really saw that Front's dynamic, kind of really user-friendly platform allowed us as the end users to create the rules and the dynamic objects ourselves, and avoid having to use our tech resources and take them off critical projects that they're working on. Again, this was really critical for us as we built out the automation and allowed us to prioritize onboarding Front sooner than maybe you could if you had to use the tech resources.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, David. We've gotten a little bit of Q&A, or we've got some feedback that there might be some mic feedback on our side. So if we're not speaking, we can feel free to mute on our side as well. And I will remind you to unmute if you start speaking and you are muted. But no, that is a really great transition to our third question, which is dynamic objects. This is something that Maya talked about. Even Maggie was talking about it in those product walkthroughs. And surprise for all the participants here, at the end of this question, I'll actually demo a little bit of this and we can take questions at the end of this breakout session. But dynamic objects is exactly that. It's a way for customers to not use their tech resources, but to then bring data into Front. And that's a really beneficial thing. I know Armstrong has been part of our beta group. And so would love to turn it over to you, David, later on. But Louisa, would love to start off with you on how are you guys thinking about utilizing dynamic objects, and what problems have you already used it for to solve?
So using dynamic objects, what we've actually been able to do is bring back a legacy system. We have, through our own AX 2012 system, we have the ability to access our transport tracker, or we did. It uses the proxy Internet Explorer that sits within 2012, and our tracker doesn't actually work with Internet Explorer. So what we've been able to do is actually use dynamic objects to give us access into that. And what it does is it opens Edge instead of the proxy Internet Explorer. And that then means that rather than taking 2 to 3 hours for one of our guys to get an answer, they can get it in one click. What it means is that as soon as a delivery is referenced in an email, it creates a dynamic object, and the guys can literally just click into that and see where a vehicle is. That, for the last few years, has been taking us 2 to 3 hours. We reach out to the transport team. They try and get hold of the driver who is on the road and can't answer their phone. The driver eventually gets back to them. Then they have to get back to the guys. And then the customer service guys get back to the customer. 2 to 3 hours to find out where your delivery is when it's probably already there at that point isn't the best. So eventually we do intend to upgrade to D365. That's in progress at this moment in time. And that's going to expand the possibilities of using dynamic objects to be able to create and access our sales orders. So effectively using our access into our EDI system, which takes 2 to 3 minutes, rather than using our manual system, which takes anywhere between 12 and 30 at this moment in time. So effectively having that access in through dynamic objects is absolutely a game changer for us.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that context as well. Actually, I'm at a conference here in Phoenix, and it's a logistics conference. And one thing that is just so apparent from a lot of the conversations that I've had with attendees of this conference is that information is just in so many different systems. But where does the work take place? And the work for a lot of companies takes place in the inbox. And so how can we bridge that gap? And that's really what dynamic objects is meant to be used for. But all in a low to no code way. And so, David, I think that is a great way to transition back to you. You were talking a little bit more about dynamic objects and how you guys are thinking about it over in the kind of 3PL space. So would love to post a question. What problems are you solving with it?
Andersen, you hit it when you said that logistics space uses a lot of different sites and resources and information stored throughout. So outside of our own transportation management system, we obviously utilize a ERP system as well, and a lot of third-party websites to pull information on carrier onboarding or to help with our payment process. So to utilize these, we're able to get information that is coming from front, through an email. And historically, we would have to go to each of those sites to pull up the information to match it up. Maybe it's, on a carrier side to look to see if that carrier is still active or if they need to be activated, or if an adjustment needs to be made. So each time we would have to do this, we would go through and, leave the front website, go to the other website, enter the MC number, find the information. Now through dynamic objects, we're able to add an object right into the email based off of the subject or body of the email, link it right to it, click on that link, and it takes us directly to the end source that we need from that other website. You're talking minutes per email. And as we've talked about, we get over 1,000 emails a day. So you can imagine how much time that has really saved us. And as you mentioned, we're in the beta of it, and we continue to come up with new ideas almost on a daily basis just to try to see. One of the biggest ones, and probably talk about it a little bit more later on, but collection side, we really think we can utilize front and dynamic objects to take information from those emails that we're receiving about customer payment and put it back into our TMS system, or at least check to see what our notes already say from the system instead of, again, having to go find it.
Absolutely. And so actually now I'm gonna exit out of this presentation real quick. And hopefully you are all still able to see my front screen. Is that right? Just a head nod. All right, sounds good. So yeah, we've talked a little bit about the dynamic objects. We've talked about it in the keynote. We've talked about it here. So we really just want to put it front and center for all of you in a use case capacity. Now, this is just obviously, we have a lot of different kinds of customers in a lot of different industries. What I want you to take away from this is like, what is the underlying power that this can give to you, and then work with us. We want to hear from you, want feedback. And if you're curious, if you have a use case for it, or if we can connect with, I can see NetSuite in the Q&A there, like absolutely. But let's just kind of get into what we're looking at here, right? We've got a conversation in our sales inbox. It's from LawsonFHopkins@gmail.com. And David was actually just talking about MC number. And so what dynamic variables is actually being able to pass these identifiers like an MC number, which is for those of you not familiar with the 3PL space, it's kind of like an identifier for a like a customer, if you will, or a carrier. And you can actually leverage this information just through Front, hit an open API that in this case, we're hitting Highway. Highway is an identity kind of like fraud detection company. So we're passing this information to them through their API. They're returning to us some information, and we're just simply selecting the information that we want and surface that over to the user. So in this one step, an admin who is not a computer science engineer is able to do all of this and is able to then help shave minutes off of every single teammate having to do this. So when you think about every email, like David was talking about, thousands of emails a day, that's really where things can get quite those minutes can really add up. Now, just to go into another type of use case, it's still kind of around the same general space, but we're talking about how can this information actually feed into automation. We'll see here that we got an email from Lawson.Hopkins@gmail. So this is a bad actor. Highway told us this is a bad actor. This is a fraud, a potential fraud alert. And what we're able to do is leverage this information and feed that into Front's rules, right? So if Front is saying, in Front, you can create rules that say, look at the dynamic object that was created, what's happening in the fields that we're getting back. And if this criteria matches, then do these things like move it to a quarantine folder because we know, rather quarantine inbox, because we know that this is a fraud alert, and then provide information to your teams. So this is just a quick snapshot. Wanted to make sure that you all had the ability to see this. If you have questions, add them to the Q&A section. But we're super excited about it. And I'm so glad to hear that Armstrong and Marshalls have already been part of the beta group and have found a ton of value. So there's clearly a lot of things to be excited about. Would love to hear what other automations you have that you have implemented that has had really big impact outside of dynamic objects. Or if you just want to keep on talking about dynamic objects, that's also fine with me. So David, let's start with you.
When we first joined Front, dynamic objects was not a thing, right? And we joined based off of the rules that we thought we could put in place to just help with our automation. Again, before we were spending a lot of time, what is important, what is critical, and if not, let's just try to get through them as fast as we could. So, for the past year, our teams in each of our departments have worked to create rules to separate different emails that are coming in. We will tag specifically emails that come in with an Armstrong domain, and they can go into a separate folder, and a specific group can work on them. We can tag customers, we can tag carriers. We're able to determine based off of keywords in the email or the header whether or not we need to move it into a setup folder or an issue folder, or a folder where maybe our night team is able to handle some of that work that our day team doesn't have to do because it's less critical. We're able to identify who to send them to from like a collection standpoint. So right now we have one collection mailbox, all of our customers go into it, but we have specific people that work on specific customers, and we're able to tag based on the rule set and what our internal grouping is to move those customers to a specific person. So they're not having to search for the email that they need to respond to. And we spent a lot of time building a lot of rules. And the better part of it is, through the time we've been able to enhance and kind of delete and use dynamic objects to replace some of the rules in a more efficient way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important that when it comes to the world of automation, it's not a one-time set it up and forget it for the rest of time. It's really important to go back and revisit them, right? Your business processes are not static. They evolve over time. So should your automation, to make sure that they're ultimately supporting what you're doing. So really good points there as well. Louisa, would love to turn it over to you for the same question.
Yeah, so the main benefit for us has been to be able to evaluate our incoming messages. They are very much based around what a customer writes in there, and humans are not robots. They don't write the exact same thing every time. So for us to be able to determine quotes versus orders, categorizing that with a tag, we then route those messages based on the information that we take in from our CRM into Front overnight. So every night, overnight, we update our contacts list using our CRM list. That CRM list contains our orders people, it contains our pricing people. Based on that tag, it knows who to send it to based on their postal code. And that automation alone has brought down what a year ago was a backlog of between 8 to 15 days to never more than 24 hours, and often 2 to 4, realistically speaking. So just that bit of routing has given us so much less manual intervention to create those efficiencies. As I said, we route those messages based on postcode data, and that is continually updated. So if an address for one of our merchants moves, that's updated overnight, and the person in the correct postcode, so wherever they've moved to, gets that order or that pricing reference. We also are able to pull all of the data out of Front into our own data lake, and it's enabled us to build dashboards that compare those teams across the whole business. And we can look at things like response time, first reply time. Each area of the business has their own CSAT score. We can see who's adhering to their SLAs, who's going over that, and where our problems and those bottlenecks are occurring. So for us, the amount of automation, which was what we were looking for when we started looking for an automation system, that was the crux of what we needed, and it has provided that just with those couple of points and then some.
Yeah, I'm actually a really interesting question that I'm seeing in the Q&A, because we are talking about automation, and of course, both of you and your companies have seen seen the benefit of automation in time saving for your teams. Someone is actually curious, like what was the tool that you're using before Front, and if you have any numbers kind of top of mind or that you're willing to share about how much time you think that Front automation has saved you, that would be a very interesting one. So David, can you share with us what was the tool, the primary tool that folks were using before Front?
We utilize kind of a combination of another system, but mainly Gmail, and try to do the groupings within Gmail and the shared mailboxes, and I can tell you this, like, being a finance guy, I obviously ran the ROI pretty heavily. And that was a big part of the, during the sales pitch and everything. And I'll say this, like, it did not disappoint. We paid for the ROI, 5 times over what we expected. We were able to there was 2 key things we wanted to hit off the front, which was on our carrier side and our collection side. And we were able to do and accomplish both of those within, I think, 2 to 3 months of getting the rules established. And the customer service side, really, of helping get those up was a game changer. We wouldn't have been able to do the rules ourselves. But anyways, from a time saving standpoint, I would say almost, if not half, pretty close to half of our time of just having to manage through the emails.
Yeah. That's a great answer. Yeah, I mean, for those of you who are not familiar with the logistics space, they're literally receiving thousands of emails every day, and that is not even an exaggeration. So when folks are talking about automation and simplification and streamlining, like the material difference on what a person is doing is drastically different. Louisa, would love to ask you the same question. What tools were you primarily using before Front, and how have you seen kind of the impact of automation from a productivity standpoint?
So we were even further behind Gmail. We were using Outlook, and Outlook is incredibly manual in everything it does. So in every department, we've got at the time around nine departments that we were initially looking to put on Front, and each of those were receiving between 1,500 to 2,000 emails a day, and we had two people, so two members of staff in every department looking at those emails, moving them around manually every single day, and that was their primary job. So whilst we haven't removed the manual intervention completely, obviously we've reduced that so that we have one person looking at it intermittently every hour or so, just to make sure that nothing is stuck. So effectively in every single department, you're looking at 18 heads of extra productivity in the whole of the business, which for us is amazing. So yeah, it's been a game changer again. The whole of Front has been a game changer for marshals. It's been a very it's been a steep uphill curve in what we've been able to achieve.
Yeah, it's really great to hear, and appreciate you guys riffing on that off the cuff. It's, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, automation is super, super powerful. And one thing that comes really naturally with automation, especially when we're looking at the news nowadays, is AI, right? So AI is the new kid on the block. There's a lot of companies doing a lot of things with AI, but I would say we're kind of in the experimentation and exploration phase. Front is obviously doing some of that experimentation and exploration ourselves. We heard from Maya and from Maggie about AI tagging, AI compose, AI summarize. These are things that, you know, Front is really thinking about in a way to keep humans in the loop. But would be curious to hear from you all, how do you think AI might play a role in automation in the future? So Louisa, I want to start with you.
So for us, the main thing I think would be to be able to get further into the context of an email. I'll refer back to an earlier point I made about, you know, every email we get in is reliant on somebody actually typing that out, and mistakes are easy to make. You know, we're all capable of making a spelling mistake, and if we're looking for a specific word in an email to enable us to tag it and route it, then obviously it's not going to get where it needs to go. If we've got an AI that is capable of going, well, actually, this is what I think you meant, and I'm going to route it to this person because of that, then that again takes out that manual intervention, and reductions in that are going to always be welcome for us, because the less we have to interact with the system to tell it what to do, the more we're able to do the proactive side of things.
Yeah, and that's I think just a quick plug for AI tagging there. I think that's exactly what we're thinking about, right? If you're already a Front customer, you're familiar with the fact that with Front, you can create keyword-based routing or keyword-based automation. So if the subject or body contains this word, then do these things. But, you know, there's definitely a rigidity to that, right? What if the person spells it wrong? What if they use a different word that's not a word that you added into your rule? So how might we let AI or leverage AI to understand what it is that I'm trying to do, and then be able to look kind of in the peripheral of that and help us still accomplish our goal without necessarily having to brute force add every permutation of a keyword or keywords into a rule. So we're really excited about that beta as well, and I hope that you all are too. So David, would love to turn it over to you. What role do you think AI might play in automation in the future?
Yeah, broadly, I think the opportunities are going to be endless. We're just getting started to see what all these new AI tools are capable of doing to help make the workflow more efficient. Specifically on the front side, tagging powered by AI, as you guys were just describing, something I don't think we're really using yet. We need to get part of the beta, but we're excited about that. I think that's going to continue to help with a lot of what we've been going through already. We're getting better and better at moving a lot of the emails out of just the general inbox, but things like that, where if there's a misspelling, it's going to help continue to make that process more efficient for us. So, another area that I think is going to be important is, if we can take the notes that we're getting from Front and put them into, let's say, our collection platform, it's going to be really game changing for us. And I know our team is already working with the Front team to test pilot that and see where that can go. So that's going to be exciting, along with the tagging powered by AI.
Absolutely. We're really excited for all the work that's coming with automation and AI. It's a huge focus for Front, especially as we think about the state of where we are in technology in the world, right? There's a huge focus and emphasis on efficiency. How can we do more with the same people, right? It's hard to hire people. It's expensive to hire people. And we've already hired great people. How can we make sure that people are doing what people are meant to be doing, right? And that's critically think with the context that we are feeding them. And so I think that's really kind of the crux of dynamic objects, but also like AI can be part of that human in the loop equation. So really excited to see where that might go. Now, for our last question here, you don't feel pressured to share any of your secrets, but it would be really great for you to share with the audience a little bit more about how you think about future planning, especially when it comes to automation. So what comes next for you all in the next 6 to 12 months? And for that, we are going to start with Louisa.
Okay. So as I inferred earlier, we are upgrading to Dynamics 365, which, because of its open APIs, will allow us to have endless possibilities of accessing sales orders. We can make amendments without going into that system and pulling stuff out. We can just get direct access into there. We'll be able to use legacy systems that we currently can't use. So effectively, just having that upgrade and that link into Front and the things that it's already able to do as of today is going to make our guys' lives a lot easier. It's not just about making the customer's life easier. It's all for our guys in the office. We want to make sure that their job is as simple as possible, that working for Marshalls is as comfortable as possible and they get enjoyment from it. So the less that they have to do, and less systems that they have to go into is really important for us to make for a nice workplace. We're also looking at building our own issue resolution system, which will basically allow us to potentially get into Front and use Front to populate our issue resolution system and use the same sort of the technology to be able to route those issue resolution emails to the right person and do something that currently we just don't have the capacity for or the capability for. So it's all very exciting for us over the next 6 to 12 months.
I'm really excited for you too. And I love that you're bringing up the fact that automation and the angle that you guys are taking with automation for the next 6 to 12 months is not just focused on improving the end customer experience, like your customer's experience. at the detriment of your employee experience, right? And that those two things don't have to be separate things or separate, separate paths. And I'm glad that you guys are focusing on how can we improve our internal agent or employee experience as part of your automation roadmap. So really cool. David, over to you to close us out with this, with your plans for the next 6 to 12 months around automation.
Yeah, Armstrong we're continuing to look for tools and resources that can help us automate our process. We partner with a lot of great companies that are forefront of innovation. We're going to continue to do that, over the next 6 to 12 months. But really excited for a lot of the things you guys have going on the beta side and in the roadmap. I think last week I learned about linked conversations and how that's going to help us track conversations from a follow-up. We get a lot of responses and everything, and those responses with this linked conversation is really going to help us resolve that initial issue more in a streamlined standpoint. Kind of goes along with that whole conversation stages where we can customize a resolution workflow. So especially I think that's going to be helpful as we need to escalate that up to maybe a manager or anything like that. Help a lot from a bottleneck standpoint. And it's also going to show us and give us a better, clear picture of the resolution time that it's taking. Our goal is to respond back to our carriers, our agents, and our customers as fast as possible. So tools like both of these are going to help us get there. Lastly, just the knowledge base that you guys are working on, kind of this help center where we can do kind of common customer questions. I think that's just going to really take away some of the common issues that we may have. And, I'd say we get 1,000 emails. Some of those are just quick thank you. Some of those are just quick questions. Things like this, like a knowledge base, is going to help us answer some of those and take the workload off the team.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing those insights and a window into what you guys are planning for the next 6 to 12 months. With that, we are going to go into the Q&A session. For everyone who has any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A button, I guess, at the top of your screen. We already have a lot of questions come in here, so let me just peruse through them real quickly. The first one that I want to highlight is, this is for both of you, David and Louisa, if any of you have anything to add here. We have an attendee asking if you are utilizing any of your engineering or tech teams over at Armstrong or Marshall's to build custom automation or integrations into Front. So just for everyone in the audience, Front does have a number of ways that you can build in. We have an open API, we have a plugin SDK, so you can kind of build like apps inside of Front. David, Louisa, has Marshall or Armstrong endeavored into that space yet?
I'll start. We started down that path of planning and figuring out some of the things to do from a tech standpoint. And I think we will ultimately do some of that. But with dynamic objects, we've actually haven't had to. We were kind of comparing the two, and we realized that we would be able to use the dynamic objects for a good amount of what we wanted to do with our tech team.
So effectively what we've managed to do, I've mentioned that we've used the API to bring on our CRM data, but as far as our tech team go, that is pretty much their involvement in what they've been doing. What we've actually done is created a group of super users who are responsible for each of their own areas, and they are responsible solely for running the automation for each of their teams, which effectively means that we have less time being taken up by our tech guys actually having to get into there and do what they would normally have to do.
Yeah, and they can then use that time to build your product, which ultimately serves your customers better, right? So that is a great start. We actually have 2 questions that I'm just going to bundle into one. Folks are really interested in hearing from you, like, what advice would you give other leaders who are just starting to explore automation for their business? Where do they start? What are the challenges that you faced? So yeah, what advice do you have? Louisa, let's start with you.
So the one thing I would say to you is make sure that you have a full roadmap of what you want to do, who you want to roll it out to, and don't try and do it all at once. So eventually we got 14 teams on the system. It took me a year to roll that out to those 14 teams. And it's worth every extra bit of time that you spend making sure that each team is working perfectly before you move on to something else. And also, once you've built something and you go to the next team, look back at what you've learned from the team prior, and also what you're learning from this new team, and look and see if you can actually apply any of that to the team that you've already been to. Make sure that you're using any of your learning experiences as you go along to improve on what you've already done. Don't think it's finish and walk away, because it's not.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a little bit of scar tissue there, but no, I think that's a really good point. You shouldn't just dive into automation for automation's sake. Like, it is really quite important to understand what are the problems that you're solving for. And in order to identify those problems accurately, you need to understand what is the journey. So go deep on the existing processes, work with the team, get feedback from the front lines, and hear where are those opportunities, because they have a ton of ideas. They're working in it all the time. So if we don't bring in those insights, that's often a big mistake. David, what about you? What advice would you give to folks who are thinking about automation?
Yeah, I'd use the front customer service team, the front resources that you guys offer. That's what we did. Everything we thought of that we had an idea of, some of them didn't work, some of them did, but we bounced them off with the team, and that helped. And from an internal perspective, when you do roll something out, make sure, double check, make sure the rules are working, make sure the process is working. There's nuances that you're going to find that, will cause issues, and you won't get it right the first time. So make sure you're checking, you're validating, and check and validate again in 30 days to make sure that it's still working as you wanted, and there's no gaps happening.
Awesome. We've got a couple of Actually, we've got quite a bit of questions about just how dynamic object works kind of in the background. I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds here, but one thing that I will just say, as you start to think and explore and be inspired to think about where this can go for your business, dynamic objects does require an open API. So Front needs to be able to pass the information we have to somewhere. And if that place is a closed gate, nobody's there to answer, so we won't be able to get any information out. So if you're working with a third-party solution, ask your account team there, like, hey, is there an API that we have access to? If it's your own homegrown system that you're talking about, connect with an engineer, or connect with someone who is working with an engineer to understand what is the capability there. A lot of the times, actually, through this beta, customers have not only leveraged existing APIs from third-party integrations, but they are connecting Front with their homegrown system in a way that's saying in a much easier lift capacity. So their engineers spin up an API endpoint, and now Front can facilitate all of this back and forth information super easily, super quickly, and with very, very low effort. So that should just help with some of answering these questions. Yeah, remote collaboration. Oh, what a great question here. We have an attendee that is asking, is there any automation that you've built, or maybe any best practices that you are thinking about or have implemented that helps promote collaboration amongst teams? David, would love to start with you on that.
With that side, what we see a lot of is if a message comes from a customer or a carrier, and it was sent to the wrong mailbox, we're able to share with another mailbox or with a specific person. And that really helps a lot on the collaboration side. A lot of the rules we've put in place as well. I talked earlier about like some of the collection stuff. That's really helping as well, just streamline the process and make sure that they're going to the right people, and being able to escalate the questions through this shared feature as well.
Awesome. Louisa, how does collaboration happen at Marshall's, and how have you guys continued to inspire folks to collaborate more? All right, there we go.
Yeah. So for us, what we've done is we've created rules based purely on an enhanced grade. Again, that comes from our CRM. And what will happen is that if it reads a certain enhanced grade has come through to the wrong team, it realizes that actually this grade of customer should go to that team, and it forwards it immediately to that team and just moves it into their box. So we don't lose any of the header data. We can still then attach it to the right person. It can still go to the right place. And effectively that then means that whoever has access to it is then able to go back to other teams. They're able to comment each other in, and they are able to talk amongst the teams just using that chat function as well. They use that a lot more than they use the Microsoft Teams function these days.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the facts is that what we're talking about day in, day out is stuff that's coming through us in our inbox. So I'm not so surprised to hear that a lot of the collaboration is happening inside of Front. Well, I will say that is time. I know there's still quite a bit of questions in the Q&A that we weren't able to get to, but first I want to just extend a huge thank you to David and Louisa for being here and sharing your insights. For everyone else in the audience, if you have questions, which I see that you really do, about dynamic objects, about really anything, please head over to community.front.com. That's our Frontlines forum, and we're excited to answer those questions there. Thank you again so much, everyone, for being here, for taking just a bit of your day to learn a little bit more about Front and what we're doing next. Have a great rest of your day.